So we're going to take our understanding of Mendel's laws a little bit further now. We're going to see about how they apply to us and whether or not they actually do apply to us. How many of you have heard of the word pedigree before? How many of you, when you hear the word pedigree, think of dogs? Not humans. But a pedigree really is kind of like a family tree situation. And we construct a pedigree to determine whether or not a variety of things are recessive or are dominant. There are lots of genetic disorders, lots of medical conditions that can be inherited. And a pedigree can help you figure out whether or not you might have it or whether or not your children might have it. Sometimes when a trait is passed, it is recessive and it causes diseases. That would be the case of hemophilia. Those that don't have the disease but have a gene for it are considered carriers. So carriers carry the gene, but they don't quite express it. What's hemophilia?
It's when you don't get blood clots, so you get like bleed out if you get a cut.
Yeah, so people with hemophilia, if they get cut, their blood is not going to clot correctly. The big problem is if you get cut and you're bleeding a lot, you could die. But they also have problems with bruising because the blood doesn't clot for a bruise either. And where is hemophilia, or historically, where has it been pretty common? Does anyone know? The Russian royal family. Actually, hemophilia was common in a lot of royal families. Because what do you all know about the royal families of Europe? They married each other. Also known as incest. When you marry someone you're closely related to. And in that situation, the traits became very common. Because when they were inbreeding, the rare traits became super common. How many of you think this is really kind of gross? Yes. Not only is it bad from a legal perspective, not only is it bad from a moral perspective, but also from a genetic perspective, breeding with somebody that you are very closely related to passes on all sorts of bad traits to your children. Potentially bad traits to your children. There's two examples of pedigrees up here. There's different shapes, there's different things colored in, and we're going to look at what do these different things mean. This one. So here a box is yellow if the person in question has the disease. If it is a white box, then they don't express the disease. You can sort of see whether or not they have the trait, and you see that which shape is male and which shape is female. Circles are female, the squares are male. If you look at the top one, it has the symbols next to them. So let's say you were born with hemophilia. That would mean both of your parents had the trait for it. That would mean both of them received a trait from at least one of their parents. And so forth. But let's do a more fun one that doesn't result in death. Should we do color blindness or male pattern baldness? Which one? Bald?
Yeah.
Okay. So in baldness, is baldness a dominant or a recessive trait? Recessive. Why do we know it's recessive? Because we all have hair. Where is the bald gene found for male pattern baldness? Does anyone know?
In the mom.
Maternal father.
It's on the X chromosome. So, a woman has 2 X chromosomes, right? A man has an XY chromosome. And baldness is an X with a little b equals bald. Now here's the thing. I heard one of you say it relates to the Y chromosome, and you were right. The reason is, if this guy only gets one X chromosome and it has that bald gene on it, is he going to be bald?
Yeah.
Yep. The woman, how many chromosomes does she need with the baldness gene to be bald? 2. The odds of her getting 2 are pretty slim. Now, if we have, oh, this one might even be on the review sheet, or the extra credit sheet, I'm not sure. Something like this probably is. Let's imagine we have a man who is not bald. What would his chromosomes be?
X, big B, and X, small b.
We're just going to do an X and a Y equals a not bald man. And then we have a woman whose father was bald, but she is not bald. What would hers be?
1X and have a small b.
1X is going to be regular because she's not bald. 1 is going to have a small b because we know that her father was bald. So not bald woman, but bald father. Is this making sense? They want to know, what are the chances that their children are going to be bald? So we're going to do a Punnett square. What traits can the father give to his children?
We. Oh, hair.
An X and a Y. What can the mother give?
X, XD.
An X and an X for bald. And then we fill it in. How many of their children are going to be bald? What are the chances? What percent of their children are going to be bald? 1 of 4, or 25%. And will it be a boy or a girl? A boy. Will any of their girls be bald? Will any of them be carriers?
Yes.
Yes. They'll have that one daughter that's a carrier, and the one that is not. And this is all statistically speaking. Because Punnett squares are giving you the chances out of 4 here, but there's a chance they could have 15 children and be like the Duggars and have no bald children. There's also a chance they could have 15 children, they would all be boys and all be bald. Because this is all statistics. It doesn't mean that as you have children, you're going to get like each of the squares knocked out and be like, we got one of those, moving on. So one of the things that we use pedigrees for are determining whether or not people are going to get a genetic disorder. I had a student a number of years ago who shared that her family had a history of genetic diseases that were lethal in babies. And her aunt and her aunt's husband got tested to see if they were both carriers or not. Because if they were both carriers, it meant that there was a decent chance that they would have a child who would have the disease. And then they were going to adopt as opposed to have children of their own because it was too great of a risk to take. Sometimes that happens. The people that deal with that are actually called genetic counselors. They have a background in biology, but also some background in social work, trying to counsel people through those decisions. Now, one of the things that we're trying to be able to do is that when people have children, maybe we could find a way to select against giving or having a baby through in vitro fertilization that has that genetic disease. So with both parents being carriers, maybe there's a way we could make sure that their child did not get it. How many of you think that sounds cool or amazing? How many of you think that sounds a little messy and potentially problematic from a moral or theological standpoint? Because how do you know what we're going to select against next? Maybe it's going to be left-handedness or blonde hair. There's a slippery slope there, right? It's a good thing to make sure a person doesn't have to suffer from a disease. But is it a good thing to say, and now we're going to get rid of everybody with blue eyes? No. So while we've used these to track diseases, these can also be used to track a lot of other genetic things. it's one of those things where if your family does have genetic problems, there would be a good thing to know about it. And once again, I'm taking pictures for those people not here. What are some diseases that you might worry about with this? So the first one's Tay-Sachs. This is seen, I mentioned it before, in Jewish lineages. It leads to uncontrollable seizures and paralysis prior to death because the enzyme Hex-A is missing and you get a buildup of lipids in the brain. The children that suffer from Tay-Sachs will never crawl. They will never walk. They will likely die before the age of 5. They will never feed themselves. They will never speak. They might smile. They'll be able to do eye contact. But towards the end of their life, they'll be catatonic. If you and your partner both knew that you were carriers of this, how many of you might choose to adopt instead? You don't have to hold up your hands for that one. But think about that. If you knew that there was a 1 in 25% chance, just like Waldis, that your child would have that, that might be a really hard decision for you to make. Cystic fibrosis is the most common lethal genetic disease of Caucasians in the United States. You've all heard of this one, I imagine. Many of you have heard of this one. It leads to problems with the lungs. So it leads to abnormal secretions due to chlorine ion channels. What that means is that the lungs fill with mucus, as do other parts of the body. People who have advanced cystic fibrosis are on oxygen constantly. And the new technology that has allowed us to extend the life expectancy to 35 involves multiple lung transplants and other things like that. This is a disease that, 50 years ago, the life expectancy was probably about 18. So we've come a pretty long way in that period of time. But it's common enough that, how many of you know somebody with cystic fibrosis? Okay, I went to school with somebody with cystic fibrosis. And by common, we're talking 1 in a couple hundred to 1 in a couple thousand.
So when they get like a double lung transplant, the disease takes over the lungs too?
That's just kind of like holding time off. There was a case a number of years ago from a girl from Radnor who her family sued the hospital because she was a child and they didn't want to give her an adult lung transplant who had cystic fibrosis, even though it was a matching lung, and tried to be able to get the laws changed about organ transplant for older teenagers. They did eventually win. The first transplant did not go well. Her second transplant did take and has extended her lifespan considerably. Because there's only so much they can do to treat the lungs after the disease takes hold, and that has increased the life expectancy. There's a lot of other medications we're using now that make it easier. There's an idea now, though, that because it's problematic to perhaps screen fetuses before they're born, what if we could change the genetics of somebody after they've been born? What if we could do something, and we'll talk about this in Chapter 10, which is next. What if we knew you were sick and we knew you had a disease and we could change it and we could alter your DNA? Wouldn't that be amazing? And we could keep you from dying from cystic fibrosis? Maybe we could make sure that you wouldn't ever feel the effects of Tay-Sachs. Or maybe something a lot of you are worried about, maybe if you knew that you carried the BRCA1 gene for breast cancer, we could change your genome so you didn't have it. How amazing would that be? We're not there yet. Will we be there within your lifetime? Probably. The expectation is we hope to be. Once again, that's one of those things where it's really close to then being able to use it with bad things. What if you decide, I don't like my eye color, I'm going to change them? Is that a good use of the technology? Is that something we should be able to change? I don't think so. And that's where the ethics get really kind of messy. The PKU disease is the most common inherited metabolic disorder that affects the nervous system. This is common in a lot of different ethnic groups. It has been fairly common in African American communities. And affected individuals lack the enzyme that they need to metabolize phenylalanine. It leads to mental retardation. That is the result of a metabolic disorder, not of an actual mental concern. And it leads to a lot of system-wide nervous system problems. What we have discovered is if we test babies for this at birth, I think I mentioned this before, we give them the right diet that contains no phenylalanine, they will never develop the disease. Because they lack the enzyme to break this one thing down, if we make sure they never have to break it down, they're never affected. There was legislation when this was put through to make sure that all babies were tested for this and not just parents who could afford the test. Sickle cell disease is common in African Americans and those of African descent. And from that, well, if you have sickle cell, you're less likely to die from malaria. You're more likely to die from heart failure, but you're going to live through malaria. So the heterozygote is better off than it is either set of homozygotes. And now we're going to get on some complicated parts of inheritance. We're not going to get super complicated, and if I decide to skip any of this, it means it won't be on the test. Test 2, which I'll have a review sheet for you by Monday. The 20th of October. I looked it up last night. So here's a fun one for you. Remember at the beginning I told you things didn't blend? In flowers, sometimes they do. It's called incomplete dominance. In incomplete dominance, the heterozygote is an intermediate between either parent. The best example of this, and one of our only examples, is the floral clock flower. It comes in 3 varieties, red, white, and pink. The pink ones contain both the genes for red and the genes for white. And when you make both red and white pigment, you turn pink. The human example of this deals with cholesterol. You've all probably heard there's 2 types of cholesterol, and one is inherited, and one comes from your food. Well, in some people, they inherit the traits for low cholesterol. Some inherit the traits for high cholesterol. It's actually the person in the middle that has normal cholesterol and is kind of the right person in this situation, because they have high and low traits. It kind of cancels them out, and they get into the middle. So incomplete dominance means not that you express both, but that eventually your expression is intermediate. In codominance, you express both fully. And the best example for this is human blood type. Your blood type options are O, A, B, and AB. If you have type O blood, we represent that as little I, because O is recessive. Both A and B are dominant, so we represent them as big IA and big IB. You can be type A and have 2 big A's, or a big A and a little I. You can be type B and have 2 IBs, or an IB and a little I. If you are type AB, you have an A and a B. So now we're going to do a couple guess the parents' blood types. Shall we pretend we're on Jerry Springer or something like that for a couple minutes? Do you ever wonder how they figure that stuff out when they're like, you are not the father, or you are the father of the baby? Before we had genetic testing, full genetic testing, they used blood types as the first thing. And we're going to see if you can figure out who's the potential parents of the baby.
Does it necessarily mean if you have the same blood type that you're the father?
Not necessarily, but it was a quick test to figure out if they definitely weren't. So we're going to figure out if they absolutely cannot be the father. So we're going to have children, the mother, possible father, and then a yes or a no. Okay, let's see. We'll do 5 of these. Okay. In our first child, they are type O blood. The mother is type O, and the man she says is the possible father is type AB. Is he the father of her children?
No.
Why not?
Because he would have to have a little I.
Can somebody who's type AB have a little I?
Wasn't IA and IB? No.
No, he
doesn't
can't.
have
He
to
can't.
be- Yeah.
He doesn't have the genes, so he is not the father. Okay, our next child is type AB. His mother is type A. And the man she says the possible father is type O. Does that work?
No.
No, because whoever the father is has to be able to give that B, doesn't he? So he's not the father as well. I don't know if we should be yay or not. So now we have a child where all we know is that he's type A. So we know he has at least one A gene, and this other one could be either of those two options. It could be another A, or it could be an I. We know his mother is type A. Can his father be type B?
There's a possibility. Only if he has the little I instead of the IB.
Because he could be either of those, right?
Yeah.
So only if he's the little I.
So that one is maybe.
Maybe. It's like he's like, we need to do more.
So in this one, we have a child who is type B. The mother is type I. Can the father be type AB?
Yes.
Yes.
Or no. Why can't he do IB and little I? That would give the child B+.
Is that a B?
Yeah.
Can the mother give a B? Nope, she's only be able to give an I. So could this be the father?
Yeah.
Could be. The child is type A, the mother is AB. Can the possible father be type O?
Yes.
Absolutely, because he could have an I. Does this help make blood typing make sense? I should point out, hopefully you don't find yourself in a situation of having to blood test to determine who's the child or who's the parent of your children, or whether or not the children are yours if you're a guy. But it's a really great example to figure out how blood types work. How many of you want to do a couple more examples? Okay. Do you want to give us an example? For blood typing, you want to call out some possible traits?
Like what?
So you want to practice more blood tests, or we want to practice more other stuff?
Blood.
Let's practice more blood. Okay. What's your blood type? Do you know?
No. I'll say an A.
Okay. So you're going to say blood type is A. Now here's the thing with blood type A. We know you have one A, but there's a chance that you have two, or that you can have both, right? So either have two A's or an A and an I. So we have one parent who has a type A blood. Somebody give us the other blood type that we want our parents to have.
Well, I have a question. So, can O go with any of the bloods, or is that O negative?
Great question. If you are type O, you are considered a universal donor because you can give blood to anybody. And the most universal of the donors, the negative and positive get wacky. Because there are 7 factors that are the RH factors that you can be positive or negative for. If you are positive for any of them. If you are negative, it means you're negative for all of them. So the O negative is your most universal of donors. The most universal of acceptors is the AB, negative or positive. That's AB. AB can accept blood from anybody. Because here's the problem. Let's imagine that you really are blood type A. And you're at the hospital and they give you a transfusion with type B blood. Your blood is going to attack the blood that was just transfused into it. Because it's going to say, this type B protein does not belong to us. So at the hospital, if you do not know your blood type, they're just going to give you type O blood. Because the last thing they want to do is give you blood that's going to make you even worse than you already are.
Where did they figure that out?
I don't know. Dr. Lutz would know. I don't, well before I was born. What state are you from?
New Jersey.
Your blood type may be on your license in Pennsylvania, it's not. Your donor card has your blood type on it? When you give blood, you will get a card that tells you your blood type. And if you have type O blood, and the Red Cross knows that you have type O blood and you like to give blood, they're going to call you all the time. Where if you have type AB blood, they're going to take your blood at any point, but they're probably not going to call you up all the time. My mom is type O blood. She gets calls all the time from Red Cross. Do you want to come give blood? It's been a while since you've given it before. Is it on your license? It's on there whether or not you're an organ donor.
It's on your license?
Organ donor is, but not your blood type.
Oh.
How many of you want to know your blood type? If we have extra blood typing kits from A&P, do you want me to see if we can do that in lab?
Yeah.
Okay.
You think you know your blood type?
If we have extra ones from A&P, we will make them available in lab someday. It will not be a required activity. Does anyone faint at the sight of blood? No, I asked because it's real. It happens. There are students on campus that we know faint at the sight of blood. We keep them out of the labs when there's blood or needles. Because we once had to take somebody to the hospital because of it. They fainted, hit their head on the floor. Scary. Okay, so we have this person who has type A blood. And we have a person with type AB blood. Can our person with A blood and type AB blood have a type O baby?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, maybe.
No, because there's no two
I don't know.
person has a
Can this person ever give an eye?
No.
Just a little eye? No, then they cannot have an O baby. Because the only things they can give. Can they have a type B baby though?
Yes. Unless you see IA and the small I there. It's not the AA, right?
So if we have a type AI person who has babies with a type AB person, their children can have two big A's. They get one from each parent. A big A and a little I. A big A and a B. And a big B and a little I. The little I is the type O. And the I stands, I don't remember what the I technically stands for. We're going to go with blood type.
So they have to have a little eye to have a type O.
To have type O, you must have two little I's.
So does that mean both parents have to have a little eye?
To have a type O baby, both parents must have a little I. So a type A person and a type B person could have an O baby if they both have little I's. Only if they both have little I's. A type AB person cannot have a type O baby. And one of the reasons we do not ask you to go home and blood type yourself and your parents, it never happened here, but there was a story, and it was suggested that people not do it afterwards. A student in an elementary school found out they were adopted when they went home and blood tested their parents and themselves. So that's why we also don't ask you guys to do pregnancy tests in front of the lab. We always get manufactured urine for that. Because you can buy it. Can you imagine if your job was to manufacture urine and you got paid for it? Can you imagine if you had to go pregnant biology lab? Woo! Not what anyone wants to find out in biology lab.
Dr. Uni.
That would be quite a way to find out. Let's not do that.
I can't see the kill.
Especially when the guys found out that way. You know,
True.
really interesting.
That is an upsetting test.
Do we think we understand blood type at all? No. Do you want to try some more? Do you think that would help?
Yeah.
Let's try one more. So where is it confusing? The whole thing? So we guess you have to have two traits for blood type, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to have two traits. There are three possibilities, but you have to have two of them. So let's try a couple of these. I'm going to write them up here. You guys are going to tell me their blood types. And then you're going to tell me what types of traits they can give to their children. So what type is this person up top?
A.
Why do we know that they're type A?
You have a big A, or big I, and an A.
Because they have a big I, A, and a little I. How about the next person?
That's A.
How about the next one down?
B.
The next one.
A. B.
A. O.
How do we know that they're O?
Two little eyes.
Two little eyes.
Because they only have the little I's. We know that has to be an O. And then one more.
B.
for our top person, what types of gametes can they make? So what traits can they pass off to their children?
Big A and little I.
How about the next one? The next person?
A big B and a little I.
How about the AB?
A or B.
How about Ethan? You told me he was type O.
Oh no.
Oh no, my brother's type O.
Okay.
I'm not type O.
He could be.
So if you're type O, it's just little i's. How about the bottom one?
Only B.
Do we understand how we got here? Because each one can give one of two traits to their offspring. And only the two that they have. So then whenever we have offspring, and let's take this one and this one. Could these two people with the red dots next to them print out what type of children they could have? I'm going to get a really fun answer. So we have our type A and O and B and O. We're going to discover that these people can combine between the two of them as every type of blood type in their children. Because if the one gives an A and the other gives a B, your child's going to be AB. If the one gives an A and the other gives an I, they're going to be A. The first one gives a B and the other one gives an I, they're going to be B. And if they happen to both give the little i's, they have an O child.
Research genetically modified. Only having O blood and AB blood. That would be like the most like.
Let's not
I know.
genetically modify people for their blood type.
I'm just saying, but that would be like making the most sense out of like the situation. Like you wouldn't have
Maybe.
to worry about anybody dying. Like by giving them the wrong blood.
Also with this, there's something called multiple alleles. Multiple alleles are that a gene has more than one form. So here it was A and B, or I. That is the example that we just did. And then a couple last things to finish in the last like 2 minutes. We already kind of started this idea of an X-linked trait. We did this with the baldness. X contains more genes than Y does because it's a larger chromosome. Males are considered hemizygous for a trait because they only have one X. And this is your example here about hemophilia. Color blindness, muscular dystrophy, and hemophilia are all found on the X chromosome. And because of that, they are much more common in males than they are in females because she would need to have 2 copies to get it.